Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is a very unusual time for me to be doing a live. It's a Sunday evening, 5 p.m. my time, Eastern Standard Time, and it's also Super Bowl Sunday. And I could not pass up the opportunity to have my dear friend, Kristina from Australia, for us to get together and choose a date between the two of us with the time change and her being a whole day different from me. It was nearly impossible between my schedule and hers. So when she said this date, I said, what the heck? We can still make it in time for the game. If you're really into football, don't worry, you're still going to get to see the game. And if you're not, this is a way for you to occupy yourself while your significant other is busy yelling at the television. So we are live on Expert Color Solutions, where I do my coffee chats. We're live with my members and the Hair Color Secrets Insiders, and also on my YouTube. And my special guest, you're going to absolutely become obsessed with. We met through social media. She's been on my podcast. I've been on her podcast. So I wanted to start with a quick video just introducing you to her and her fabulous style. And then we're going to chat all things color. We have a lot to share with you. So strap yourself in and let me share with you her video. Sorry about that. This is a new feature on this platform, and I'm seeing in the comments there was no audio. So you missed her fabulous sound. I will upload that video so you can watch it again. But more importantly, here live in real time is Kristina. And she wasn't saying anything in the video. That was just a fabulous sizzle reel of all of her talented things that she has done. She has been a platform artist, still is. She teaches both in person and virtually, and she's also still behind the chair making people look absolutely fabulous with her color creation. So let's welcome Kristina to the live stream. Hello, beautiful.
Hi everybody. Hi, Elaine. Nice
Sorry
to see
about
you.
the sound. All right, now Mary's saying can't hear. Can you guys hear me speaking and you just couldn't hear the video? Or can you not hear us at all? Because that's a problem.
Can you hear me as well?
Somebody type in if you can hear our audio now. It's Kristina and I chatting. Okay, good. So they were referring to the video. There's an extra button that I needed to click for the audio. So sorry about that. It's always something, right, with technology. But technology aside, I'm talking to
It's
my
always
friend in Australia right now, live on 3 platforms. So that's pretty amazing. Audio or no audio, that is absolutely amazing. Kristina, thank you for taking this time. It's morning for you. Yes. Is this Monday morning for you?
It is morning. Good morning. It's Monday morning. Yes, but it's Sunday evening. I feel very special to be talking to you, particularly on Super Bowl Sunday. They do show American sports here, so there will be probably Americans and Aussies alike banding together, sneaking out of work or pretending they're in a meeting at a nearby bar, I'm sure. But the awkwardness is it sort of starts here mid-morning on a Monday. So it's not quite as big, but I'm very honoured for those of you that are squeezing this in before. It's about to be one of your biggest days of the year, I think, there for entertainment. So, yeah, really, really happy to be here.
And extra special for me, I live in St. Pete Beach, which is 30 minutes from Tampa. So the Bucks are playing at home in the Super Bowl, the first time that it's been here. So it's a shame because how amazing is that? And they cut the amount of people who can attend by, I don't even know, a lot, like 70% or something.
Yes.
Everybody has to wear masks and be distant. So it's not going to be the same, but that's amazing that they get to play on their home
So amazing.
turf. Now, someone else just said sound gone. Tell me, Alicia is on here. Alicia, tell me if you can hear us okay. I wonder if it's on certain, because I'm on so many spots that's giving us a problem. Let me go on and check. And then we're going to chat all things. Yeah, I see. I hear sound on my end. It could be somebody. All right, let's keep going because I have so much that I want to talk to you about. I love your podcast. So everyone, if you didn't get that in her video, I will make sure to share her podcast information with you. We were chatting before we went live and I was laughing at she is so much more organized than me. I told her what I wanted to talk about and I referred to an older podcast and I'm giving her all these things that I want to talk about. She's like, I've got this. I have my show notes. I'm like, wow, look at you, Miss Organized. I would not be able to do that. I don't know what I talked about yesterday.
I was like, jotting it down. Yeah.
So, Kristina, I know that you are an absolute rock star when it comes to redheads. And that was my plan to bring you on and talk about all of your tips on reds. And we still can talk about that because I love the simplicity of things that you've said to me in the past and in your video that's already in the insider membership. All the insiders love you. They already know who you are. So this is extra special for them to see you again. But my coffee chat listeners may not know who you are and not realize how passionate you are about reds and painting reds. So I know that you have a fabulous ebook. So we're going to share that with everyone as well. And of course, they're going to follow your podcast. Something that stands out for me and I use often, I always give you credit. There's two things. The first is, do you want to be a color artist or a color chartist? And of course, I can't say it as adorable as you and your cute little accent. I love that because it's so true. And my other thing was the podcast that you did on, or no, it wasn't a podcast. It was you and I talked about it, I think, when you were on my podcast about a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I love that because when you're formulating, someone will put a question and they'll say, help me with this red. And they'll talk about level 9s. And I hear you in my head going, a 5, 6, 7, 8, because true red doesn't live at 1, 2, 3, 4, or, 9, 10. And that, when I reach for a tube of color now, I hear you in my head doing that snap Broadway 5, 6, 7, 8. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay, well, luckily I've had a coffee. I should have had maybe a stronger one to feel confident doing it. But your gorgeous rendition then has certainly inspired me. And I'm sorry, my only technical difficulty is my cat just jumped above the table here. So if you see something do this, it's a tail. I'm just moving anything breakable out of her way. It's all going on here. So growing up, and I think as a teenager and in my early 20s, spent quite a lot of time in bars and particularly seeing drag shows and friends that loved doing the shows. And so that sort of like 5, 6, 7, 8 really was something fun, and it was visual and it just made sense. And something that I realized when I was traveling around teaching, going into salons, going into back rooms, I've toured a lot in America. I've been on stage at the Behind the Chair presenting Red for Redken, as well as, Australian and New Zealand and throughout Asia. I've worked with lots of different brands, but predominantly with a few key ones, and really saw that there wasn't this understanding of reds, and something that was drilled into me that copper sits at a level, orange is at a level 7. And so when I was getting taught, that was the one thing I was taught. So as long as you know 7, you'll be fine. However, I didn't really understand where the reds sit and where the gold came in. And for the last few years, I decided that I wanted to become a red hair expert. I changed my Instagram bio. I would say 9 out of 10 new client inquiries are redheads for me now in the salon chair. So I've created a whole niche clientele where people will travel from all over Sydney, which is where I'm based. And I also do blondes and color corrections. So often it's blonde to red or redheads to blonde. I'm comfortable there. I love it. But I also realized that a lot of us didn't know how to do it. And so I came up with this kind of catchy, and it's a little bit embarrassing yet character building to get up on stage and go, okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it sinks in. And I think it's helpful because at a level, let me do it without practicing, 5. Level 5 is a cool or berry red. A level 6 is where red lives. And that could be undertone, or it could be when you're painting a bright red. Level 7 is where copper lives, and level 8 is where gold copper is. So I dived a little bit deeper, but I don't like to overcomplicate things because I think as hairdressers, we can tend to do that ourselves. We add on all the emotions and the conversation and the consultation. So if one thing that you can take away from our conversation today is the 5, 6, 7, 8 rule. It's in my ebook that's free. I've got a podcast. I think it's one of the earliest ones that describes it a little bit. But basically, it's level 5, 6, 7, 8. And then that'll help your reds be great. That could be a really daggy, catchy tune that you could sing. So the lighter you go, the more gold. But you only really need to know those 4 levels and then start exploring with technical confidence. And then you start thinking about the developers or the peroxides. But that 5, 6, 7, 8 rule is something that I know once hairdressers hear it, they start, I can just imagine them at the color room going.
I want people to send me videos of them mixing a 5, 6, 7, 8 in tribute.
Because let's face it, sometimes we know that we're going to be doing a redhead or a blonde or a brunette, but just as often someone can walk in and they're in our chair and they say, I want to do this today. And you're back-to-back appointments. And if you've got something that's quick, that's easy to recall, then you can just do that little, and then you think, okay, are they asking for a red, which is a 6, or are they asking for an orange, like think of a classic Irish redhead, that sort of ginger golden. Golden is a bit lighter, but that orange copper, that's a level 7. And then you can take yourself out of that heat zone for a moment and get back into having fun painting hair and knowing and getting predictable results. That's where it really came from.
And it leads me to my next favorite podcast was you talked about, hair color is not a recipe. And that's our biggest frustration as educators when people will write to you and say, I have this client coming in and she wants this, and they show us the inspo pic and that's it, and say, how do I get her here? And I'm like, okay, first of all, can I see her now? Does she have relaxer on her hair? Does she have a perm? How's her porosity? What is her natural level? What color has been put on there before? What is her texture? Is it thick? Is it coarse? Is it, thin? Like there's so many questions. And I think so many colorists have fallen into that trap of, getting a download from someone advertising on Facebook, get my most popular formulas. And people are like, yes, please give it to me. And they run around and they buy the exact tube and the exact measurements. And if I put it on my hair and put it on your hair, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah,
We look completely different right now. So we're really going to look completely different when we're finished. Can we talk about your earrings? Because that's something that I know that you do. You made those, didn't you?
Oh, yes. So these are I've got 3 different ones, but these are my favorite emojis. Can you sort of see them? They're the black ones.
I love them.
That's maybe helpful. There's an Australian designer who's a friend of mine that makes gorgeous, kitschy, I'd say, jewelry. And she hand makes all of these and sinters them with a machine in a Sydney warehouse. And so she made me 3 special designs. And so this is like an art palette, probably easier on that side. And each little squirt of paint is glittery and they come in a couple of colors. And then I've got one that's like a big drag queen's wig or a big theatrical sort of wig, and then another one that's the tail comb, that are rainbow tail combs. So I wear these now at work. I'm wearing PPE and a mask and they kind of get in the way. So I thought Monday at home talking to my colourful friend Elaine, I'm going to wear them. So yeah,
I'm glad you did.
Wear these on hair shows and at events. So I've got a little online shop. They're the same thing that my glitter color boards are made out of.
But I was just going to say, while we're talking about glitter, we have to talk about your fabulous color boards. Yeah, I have 2 of them and I'm obsessed with them.
I've just got a whole new batch in. They've been really hard to get. I'm sure you're probably experiencing, like everywhere in the world, the post or the deliveries or the courier services are struggling, or they're slower, or there are certain things you can get and you can't get. But I've just gotten a large batch of color boards in, and I've got 10 different colors, and I've now got my logo on them. So it's really exciting, and you can use them for balayage and hair painting, and they're literally the same, like glittery colors here, because I know most of us as hairdressers do like colorful, tacky things. Not all of us. So I did get some classic black for those people, still with glitter. But
I love the pink is my favorite. I use the pink all the time.
Me too. You can paint them, and people that are learning to foil can wrap foils, because I saw a lot of people using like takeaway containers and things. So I thought there has to be a more beautiful solution, but something that's okay for the environment, as far as it's not something that's disposable that we're throwing out. It's reusable as well. You can just wipe it down. You can paint it with color. So I'll share links for everything. And I think it's amazing that you were just referencing, and thank you for listening to my podcast. As I was sharing before we got on this call, that I was inspired by that formula episode after listening to one of Elaine's ones, and it was when you were sharing your mathematical equation for how to choose the level and the peroxide, which is a mind-blowing theory and episode that I listened to of yours. And it sparked a thought of mine, because I get often asked, oh, can you match this? Or I just get random messages from hairdressers as well as people that want to get their hair done, not necessarily by me, just wherever they live in the world. Oh, what formula would you do? So I realized that it's quite a common thing. It happens when we're in classes. So if I used 10p, am I going to get that 10p result? But it's not just like, here's a chocolate cake recipe, and as long as your oven's as hot as mine or so, like you might take yours out 5 minutes before it burns, or you might need to leave it in 10 minutes longer. But here's all the recipe, the steps. You can duplicate it, copy it. You could make it 100 times. It'll be the same. Doesn't matter if you're at your mum's house or your friend's house using their oven. But hair is very different because of all the history and because of the different textures and things. So that's why I loved that episode that you did, and I sort of put a different spin on it in a way of being careful of social media and copying, because it's good to ask those hairdressers what their starting point was. And I think social media is amazing because it's free to access. We met on social media, which is awesome. But I also think it's an opportunity to support another colorist and say, oh, I love what you did there. Would you mind sharing why you chose that formula?
Much better question.
Does that
Yes.
have gold? Is that a green reflect? And then that helps them also on social media get more views because they're seen as somebody that's getting more engagement, and they get suggested to other like-minded followers, and it builds a community. So not only are you getting teaching from them, they're getting more visibility and they're getting inspired, and it becomes a bit more of an exchange of ideas rather than just thinking, oh, that person put 7 natural on there and 6%. I don't get great coverage when I do that. My brand mustn't be good. And you start sort of either second guessing yourself or your brand. But really, I believe I've got some favorite brands, of course, but I believe that whatever brand you use, you should be able to get grey coverage. You should be able to get reds. You should be able to achieve blondes, and you should be able to get happy clients. But the missing link sometimes is having an educator that guides you to that outcome. So I think, that's where I found that podcast was quite a good one to really discuss because of the social media element as well.
I love that you brought up branding because today's podcast, today's walk on the beach, accompanied by colorful Kristina, was in my ear. And all of your podcasts are so great that I couldn't even decide which one to spend time with before we went live. But I'm so happy that I chose the one that I did. It was about curly hair. And I can't tell you, I'm blessed to have a daughter with curly hair. So I get to play and come up with new techniques on her hair. And we did something very recently that I shared with my Hair Color Secrets Insiders that I absolutely loved. And what was special about it was, as you know, with highlighting and glazing, you put in the highlights and then you apply the glaze, but the glaze is going to hit all of the new highlighted hair evenly. But with curly hair, it's fun to see a lot of different colors and tones going through. So I got creative one day and did something totally different where I literally grabbed sections and hand painted the glaze with the kaolin clay that you would use for balayage. And just grabbed sections and toned each section a different color. And what you talked about on the podcast with curly hair made me feel good about me just doing this randomly, how forgiving curly hair is and how important it is to have extra fun. Something you said in the podcast, I loved, it was similar to the color artist, color chartist. You said curly hair color can be mild or wild. I loved that. Because highlights can get lost in curly hair. You go in and treat a curly head like a traditional foil highlight, and both you and your client are going to be disappointed because it's going to be too uniform. The curls are going to clump together and it's going to look all one color. So let's dive into, you have so many tips in this episode. We probably won't even have enough time to share all of them, but I can totally tell you what my wow factor was and kind of have you go through those points. So the first point being, it was so important to listen when you said curly hair is one of the most Googled things. And that's huge because people are coming back from being closed down during COVID. So they're a little slow in the salon and they're trying to be all things to all people. You and I both chose to specialize in color, and that has skyrocketed our careers because we went all in on one thing. And I'm not saying everyone listening has to go all in on one thing, but pick something that makes you stand out. When I think redheads, I said to you when we got on here, I'm coming to Australia and you're making me pink. You're the person that I would trust to make me pink. I wouldn't trust anyone else to do that. So you made yourself known for that thing. And curly hair is such an opportunity right now to specialize in and understand the mild versus the wild, the type of corkscrew curls. So I'm going to let you talk because there's so many things that were light bulb moments that I would walk a little bit and stop and do a voice note. Walk a little bit, stop. I'm like, you were bad for my exercise, but great to prepare for this chat.
Sorry. I feel that way about podcasts as well, and some podcasts that I share. And the podcast is called Color Kristina Talks, but we'll share links to this particular one. There's show notes and a blog as well on curly hair. But I feel that sometimes I really like listening to hair podcasts or social media ones, and there are some where I think, oh, I can't get what I'm doing done. I've got to sit down and write notes or type them into the notes on my iPhone. So sometimes at the beginning of a podcast, I set people up to say, this might be one that you want to listen through, just what you're doing, and then go back and, listen again with notes if it's got lots of technical sort of things. But I know that that's what's great about podcasting is you can be out walking, or you could be decluttering a cupboard with headphones in, listening to music or a podcast while you're gardening. So that's why I love them, and I try to present a conversation, so it doesn't have to be so polished as well, so it's really quite warm and inviting. And this curly hair one that I did, there's I don't know if it's a revolution or it's a necessary change that's happening in Australia. There's not enough color or even any curly cut conversations happening up until recently. And so it's inspiring a lot of change. Where I'm lucky is I was trained by a woman called Alison Shower, who opened Australia's first colour specialist salon. She has curly hair, and she was trained by Annie Humphreys in Vidal Sassoons, and she was the head of but in Buffalo, New York. She was the head of the Sassoons colour department throughout the 80s. And so that's when there was a lot of texture. There was perming, hit and miss perm, really textured colour. Annie Lennox, the bright oranges, the bright bleaches, Cyndi Lauper. We're thinking back to that era. For those of you that don't know who I'm talking about, you could just Google Cyndi Lauper.
She's still going strong. I just saw her live in concert. And she's still amazing.
But that really 80s like textured hair. So she was doing a lot of perming, straightening, curly techniques. So when I was doing my training, curly hair was quite a strong feature, but it was described as textured hair. So we would get the texture in it. And we really went through everything that you could get at a craft store or an art store, from clothing pegs that you could, hang your clothing on a line. You could dip pegs into color and clamp them onto areas of the hair. You could make things look like lolly wrappers and just grab random pieces. It was all about getting highlights and lowlights, but that were really chunky so it didn't disappear. And so recently in Australia, more afro hair or any curly hair and dry cutting techniques are getting really pushed to the head government levels, that not only do they need to get taught in our beauty colleges and technical training colleges, but salon owners need to be investing in training their team, getting curl specialists in, and product companies. When you look at a whole shelf, and there's 50 products, 45 of them on average in a supermarket, in a chemist, in a salon, are aimed at getting frizz-free, smooth hair, how to iron your hair down. And there's a whole world out there that have curl or have – I've met somebody who calls themselves an intentional frizz advocate. So if you've got frizzy hair, wear it frizzy. Like, sure, you can straighten it, but let's support people in knowing their natural beauty and feeling beautiful wearing it. So knowing how to color curl, it's so important. Like, even I love like really curly fringes, and on a curly haired person to have that. So there's a couple of curly hair experts I spoke to, and then I thought, let's start talking about curly color. I've got one technique, and I think give me a couple of months and I'll get some mannequins sorted, and I could do a couple of really quick hands-on things for you, Elaine, if you would like to have me back doing that.
I would love that.
Because the key is these are really quick, so you don't have to wait for hours to see what the result is. There's one where I literally scrunch color in. So you know how you could scrunch a mousse or scrunch styling product into curly hair? It's exactly the same, but you paint bleach, wearing gloves, paint bleach, and then go in and scrunch, and then go perhaps a bit heavier and scrunch. Probably 5 to 8 minutes to do a full head on the ends. I do that before a semi-permanent or a demi-permanent, and it creates this, it's like sun-kissed but for curls, because when you do that, some pieces here might get really saturated on curls and other pieces are left dry. So the corrugation or the curl, we want to basically get stripes and bands down it, which is what we don't want on straight hair like this, because the way the hair twists, if there's a little bit of lightness here, darkness, lightness, a lot of lightness on the ends, it catches the light and it's incredible. So if you wanted to put a walnut color, or I know you Americans like pumpkin spice, or creme brulee, whatever, or just a brown semi-permanent, it will be really glossy and sparkly. And because it's curly, it changes with the weather.
We're showing our age, Kristina. This was a big thing in the 80s, because if people had hair, we permed it, right? Everybody had big permed hair. And we used to do that scrunch technique exactly like that, just like scrunch it in. We were accidentally basically doing like a soft balayage without knowing that balayage would become a thing. I also saw, this was a fun technique that you just reminded me of, doing a single process retouch and pulling the shade through the demi through the ends to refresh. But while the demi is on, putting powdered lightener in a salt shaker and dusting the ends of the hair with the lightener in a salt shaker, just to give it that sparkle look, like to make it just a tiny bit of dimension in there. And just all those kind of things were like, everybody was just trying to do something different and get away from cap, doing the cap highlights, and we were just starting to foil. So these were ways of doing things quicker. But I love that.
I think it's awesome. And I think that's really relatable now as well, because it was at an early stage of there being foiling and maybe only a couple of patterns, and they weren't necessarily meeting people's expectations. But curly hair is something that classic colorists can absolutely do, but also complete newbies, they sort of have that bravery, or they're not so locked in that things have to be a certain way. And that's what I love about curls, because if you imagine you could just do sort of 10 well-placed foils rather than doing a slice or something that's really flat and doing, 4 foils here at a diagonal and 2 more there to get a burst of color, which could work well on my hair if I wanted a lighter fringe perhaps. But you could go through and, let's say, like a dime, or in I've got to practice doing that to a camera. There we go. Like a coin, a dime, or a 10 or 20 cent piece in Australia or Southern Hemisphere, we would call it. But it's a circle. Another way of thinking, you could grab large sections that are like a donut hole. So that's more probably it's a better visual wherever you are in the world. I'm sure we've all seen or loved eating a donut. And then the trick is to leave the space, so where the actual donut is. So you could do a full head of foils that are just donut holes, and I'm serious when I mean a large amount of space around them. So you could have a full head of curly foils, might be anywhere from 10 to 15 foils at the most. And they're thicker, and you just backcomb or tease them a little bit, and you get these beautiful twists of color throughout. You can tint in between, you could leave it natural, but that's a really classic curly hair thing that you could do. The foils look messy. They kind of look like just twists going throughout, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But if you start telling curly hair people when they're in your chair, this is something I've always done, unless they're one of those difficult people and I don't want them back, but they're rare. So I usually touch their shoulders and I just say, as I'm finishing off, I really love curly hair. I love coloring your hair, and I love changing it up as needed. I have quite a few curly clients and they only trust me with it. That's when I got more confidence. But at first I would just say, I really love coloring curly hair. I like creating customized color for curly hair clients. I'd love to see you back, but this will grow out really well. So I always encourage them to come back. The type of work that I like to do, I let them know that I like to do it. But do you know what? If you start getting a little bit more confidence and exploring curly hair and start offering it, if people are looking for curly hair expert Boston, curly hair expert New York, curly hair expert me, and you're using the appropriate hashtags to help them find that on your social media, as well as it'll start coming up in Google. Maybe you start sharing some curly hair tips using how to create curls, but get some natural curly hair people in and even do a staff training or a bit of an exploration on it. It really is this large untapped clientele that are maybe looking for you, but they just can't find you. So I really think that this year, if you're in the process of rebuilding and you're wanting to attract some new clients, curly hair people are looking for you. They're looking for someone that loves curls.
I have to bring you to share your advice on, first of all, the analogy of the flowers in a vase. Someone brings you flowers. If you're not, really into being artistic, you cut a little bit off the bottom, shove them in a vase, and they're pretty. They're pretty flowers. But if you take the time, like Alicia's on here, anytime I got flowers, I would hand them right to her. And she would, arrange them so beautifully. She did all my son's flowers for the girls for his proms. She was amazing at it. And she's also an amazing colorist. And it transfers over, right? When you're a more creative person, you're going to take that next step. So I love that analogy about the flowers in a vase. Can you speak to that a little bit as far as curly hair?
Yeah, that's a great, thank you. That's a really great question, actually. And I, for one, love looking at what florists can do. And I am the sort of person that it looks like I've just dumped flowers in a bucket and they don't look that great. So when they arrive or when they're a gift or I go to a florist, I can really appreciate the artistry that they've known, the different bloom sizes, the textures, the different heights. And I think that curly hair or approaching a head like a sphere rather than a two-dimensional, like it's just for an Instagram photo or just what they see in the mirror, if you're not sort of on the social media platforms, we sometimes look at just the photograph. And it relates really also to a consultation, because you might see a photograph of the front or the back of someone's head, but think of it like a vase, because you need to be able to walk around and it's beautiful or it's considered at every single angle. So there might just be a little bit of color underneath that matches to the top. If we're talking haircuts, it's not just a technique coming through here. And something that I was described to recently by a curly hair cutting expert who does dry haircuts, and something I think that Elaine also likes to share with her students and colleagues, is to think of bonsai, which isn't the same quite as flowers, because flowers are blooming and they are changeable. I think that flowers are a great way of thinking of the head as a whole, or like a total look. And the bonsai is more specific perhaps to curly hair, because you trim tiny little pieces out and then you get left with this shape. And it's just about removing enough space or removing a little bit off a little bonsai tree branch to then allow the rest to grow with twists and more beauty. And this dry cut expert said it's sometimes about removing a few bits of space to let the rest really bloom. So curly hair cutting could be quite similar to that, where you're taking little pieces out, seeing if there are a few twists that come out, and then your color mind starts thinking, oh, that's a beautiful long piece. That would look beautiful lighter. Or that darker piece, I'll go in and, make that a little bit more exaggerated and deepen it a little bit. So I think organic things like flowers and gardens, as colorists and hairstylists, we can really gain inspiration from.
You also talked about having a technique where it's important to jump 3 to 4 levels between your color formula. And I loved that. Can you share a little bit more about that in reference to
Yeah.
curly hair?
Yeah, in reference to curly hair, that's something with harmonious color, with multi-tone highlights. If you're wanting to have noticeable texture on any head of hair, having at least 2 levels of difference makes it noticeable. So if you were, let's say, we'll start with the comparison. If you were to do a classic creamy blonde bob, I was always taught and have since gone on and sort of refined it that you need to have 2 or 3 colors really close to one another. So you might have a level 10, a level 9 natural, and a level 9 gold beige. And when they move around, there's a bit of a shimmer, but it's not stripy. It's not overly noticeable that there's variation, but it just looks really beautiful, glossy, healthy, and never dull or flat or one color. But when you start getting into low lighting or more noticeable texture, you need to have at least 2 levels of difference. So that classic creamy blonde for a curl, or somebody that wants more noticeable texture, might change from those higher colors to be a level 10, a level 9, and then perhaps a level 7. So you've then got something that's creating a bit more contrast. And to me, that would still be a lovely natural blonde palette. Curly hair, I think you can have at least 3 or 4 levels of difference. You want noticeable contrast. So if you were doing multi-tone work, let's say in the natural palette, you could have, for a low light, let's create a imaginary client in your chair. If they're a level 6, I would consider doing a level 3 as the low light, perhaps a level 6 with 30 vol to get a beautiful caramel, and a level 9 or 10 for your blonde, and then to use the natural as that base. If you are working with red curly hair and you wanted to get a couple of different, could be freehand, could be foiling, I would say you would perhaps start at a level 4 or 5, which would be like a more of a berry color, go up to a level 6, and then perhaps a level 7 and a 10. So you start really mixing it up. There doesn't have to be a rule that it's only 1 or 2 levels apart. In fact, the more further apart they are, the more noticeable contrast. I've even been known to go in with black and bleach and only use those. And so I might have done just the ends of the hair in black, the roots with a bleach, and then I stick another foil on top so they don't buddy up or touch each other, and then flip it. So the next one becomes, black at the roots, bleach on the ends, and then the texture is incredible. And when
That
it
sounds
grows
amazing.
out, you don't have to do the same thing again. You cut into it and it gets more textured. So it wouldn't matter if it was 8 levels difference. If you're wanting the contrast, you can really go stronger with curls, because otherwise it just disappears.
So you just said flip it, and that just reminded me of another thing that was a wonderful aha moment about taking the curl and painting it and then flipping it and painting the other side differently. Talk about that. I love that.
For a moment, I thought when I said flip it, I thought you were going to call me up. I just thought for a moment, is that something that translates ruder
Poorly in the US?
America?
No.
I would sometimes get in trouble when I used to teach for Redken for years, for those of you that don't know me. And partly it would be translation and slang, but sometimes the team would just set me up to do something they thought was funny, and they knew everyone else would be laughing, and then I would realize it meant something very different. So I'm glad when I said flip it, I thought, did that come out wrong? So there was another one. If you were to paint hair, you could have, let's think donut holes and donuts in our sectioning, and you have a thicker piece of hair, and then this is a piece of hair laying on a foil or a foil board. You could be using a balayage board or a hair painting board, but I tend to do it in foils. You can paint one side of the hair like a nice bright red, or maybe you've got mixed tones or boosters and you're really making it a high volume, high brightness color. you paint that because it's a thick section. You're not getting it all the way through. And then you twist it, flip it, and paint over the other side a contrasting color. So some of them will merge, and that makes it gorgeous. So you might do
I love that.
a level 4 red that's cherry, and a level 7 spicy bright orange with an orange booster. You can do anything that's in the same color family that touches. So permanent, oxidative dyes, semi-permanents and permanents, they're fine to party together. But if it's a bleach and a tint, that's how we say, I mean, sure, you could do it. I perhaps have, but you don't get expected outcomes. And that's maybe good for wig work, but not, maybe it's good for a hair show or fashion week. It's good to have up your sleeve for hair extensions that are clip-ins for party hair or festival hair for braids and things. But I think if you can get it with a high lift tint, even like or a level 12 tint, perhaps with a lower level one, it's really fun because it just twists and you get these different sparks of color. So it's really about going in and having, stronger pieces. Less is more, but chunkier is better with curly hair.
I love that. And you talked about, you can use bleach on one side and tint on the other, but it's an unexpected result. You talked about tie-dye with curls. What does that look like?
Well, I've got some photos of that result that I could actually share in your group. So I did an editorial collection a few years ago where I did a couple of things. I studied textile design and printmaking many years ago, and within that, there were elements that we did what was called resist dyeing. So it's a Japanese method. Some of you have probably heard of it. You might even have something in your wardrobe that is made by this type of technique. So rainbow and tie-dye tend to go hand in hand, and people sort of either love it or hate it, but we all probably know what tie-dye is. And the Japanese form is called shibori, and that's often with indigo, so dark blues and more classic whites on kimonos. And it might be, you might even have a beautiful, a scarf that's made of silk in your wardrobe, or you've seen it on a friend that's these beautiful dark blues. It's basically, you can fold, so how, like I've got a bow here, you could fold, that fabric and dye over it, and whatever's tightly, it's either stitched, or in tie-dye you use elastics where you twist that around there and you can dip it in a bucket. You can do the same with hair. So we've got elastics. We can create resistance by doing braiding. So something that you could do on longer hair, which is incredible and so easy, and I am not a stylist, to do a 3-strand braid where you braid the hair, and you could do this all over the head and then paint over the top of the braids. Where the elastic is, it will have more resistance, so you're actually protecting that hair. And then anywhere below the elastic is now like a classic ombre. So you could do a few plaits, and it creates, on hair that is wavy, it creates more curl because it gives you a ripple effect. If you imagine reflections on water, that sort of rippling. So painting a braid creates soft banding on the hair, which actually makes it look wavier or curlier as opposed to just frizzy. But elastic bands alone, you could do a few random bands at different heights and then really like pull the band to where you want it to be and only paint below the bands. And that gives you a strong ombre, really suitable on straight or curly hair. I've seen it on a hair show before where they've pulled it all to one elastic at the front, sort of like a unicorn, and then they paint that. But you've got to be careful where all that colour's oozing. I also saw that in a hair show. So you need to – and it's all red. So you need to be careful where that is all sitting. But if you do a few, it's really easy because the rubber bands become like your sectioning clips. So you've got these bands there and you just paint all the color up, and then have a look at it once it's all processed. You might need to blend it just a little bit with a toner or a semi-permanent, gloss treatment, but it's a pretty fun, crafty way of coloring hair tie-dyeing.
So speaking of semi-permanents and gloss treatments, something else that you said that was a really great point when dealing with curly hair is that curly hair really loves and needs moisture, and that you can actually make curly hair behave curlier and look much shinier in what you're choosing to color with.
Yes, I think that's something that I really instill into clients as well. So if you're wanting to let curly hair clients know how much you love curls, you need to show them a little bit of extra knowledge that is also kind of like problem solving, I guess. So I know that your hair can tend to be it is curly, which can tend to make it dry or feel wiry. It can be hard to tame. So just like any other client in your chair, if you know some of their pain points, or perhaps why they're coming to see you and why they might have left their other hairdresser, then you're acknowledging that. But curly hair loves moisture. So even if they're not really due to get anything done, but you're wanting to introduce them to color, even if you have color conditioners that have a hint of color, like a direct dye with a moisturizing mask, that could be an incredible first introduction for a curly hair person who's come in for a cut. Would you like to try this temporary? I've got a walnut color, or, a purple, conditioner of sorts, whatever the brand is. You could put that on them. But also anything that's a demi or semi-permanent or high gloss or physically like a high sheen color, something that makes the hair look shiny, will always benefit a curly hair client, regardless of whether they're a blonde, brunette, or redhead. So moisture treatments and gloss, because it's such a textured head of hair, you can never go too heavy with the gloss.
Yeah, you don't get that light reflection when the hair is twisting versus straight hair.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Your pink fringe looks beautiful. No worries.
I think it's like a mirror, because I've realized I've done that.
Yeah, everything's opposite on the camera, but it looks great.
Oh, that's what's happening.
I love the pink.
Okay, it's like it's my first time.
When I try to share my color swatches, when I do this and I go to point, I'm pointing at the wrong one because it's on the wrong side, and I'm still getting used to that. I do it all the time.
Oh, I just was doing, and the sun's beaming in, and then I thought, now I look like I've got a little bald patch. Thank you for helping save that moment of me doing that.
No, you look beautiful. You're glowing. Someone just said, "Love your hair, Kristina."
Oh, thank you.
So I could talk to you forever, but I do know you have another appointment.
Yes. And you guys have the football as well.
So many light bulb moments, so many ahas were shared. We're going to share your podcast, where to find your podcast, where to find you and follow you, and how to get your ebook.
Yep. Awesome. I'll share the links, as well as what I'll do in the next few days is I'll upload a couple of editorial photos that show some examples of that ripple effect that we talked about, and some curly hair photos as well. So I'm purposely going to be sharing some more curly hair on my Instagram. I work with some dry cutting experts, so we're doing lots of that. And next month, are we in February? Yeah, in a month or a month and a half, I'm going to be launching my online signature course that, thank you, Elaine, is giving me a few little tips in, well, quite a few tips.
You're welcome. I'm so excited for you.
Technical stuff. So I know how to teach hair, but taking that from a classroom to online is very different. I'm so sorry. That's my buzzer. Could I be 2 secs? I'm so sorry. While you wrap up. Sorry.
So you've all seen how absolutely stinking adorable Kristina is, and it's such a pleasure to have her joining me from so far away. Please follow her podcast. I promise you will never be disappointed. She has the best topics, the best guests. She is a wealth of knowledge. She is always this sweet. Trust me. You never catch her. She's back. You never catch her on a crabby day. She's amazing. And she and I share a love and passion for hair color. This is what we do.
Yes.
We teach color. We love color. And her techniques are so different than mine. We learn from each other. We love collaboration and sharing with all of you that love color as much as we do. So I hope that you'll take something that you learned today and, take those curls, flip them over, do another color. I know I'm going to do that as soon as I get my daughter in my hands again. But thank you so much, Kristina. This is so amazing. And I am going to take you up on that. You're going to come into the insiders and do an actual technique class. We're going to get that date on the calendar. And everybody, Kristina is teaching.
That. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, Elaine.
Go ahead. Sorry, you froze a little bit.
Sorry, it froze. So I was like, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Elaine, for this opportunity, and thank you for welcoming me into your colourful groups. You're a very special treasure and a wonderful new friend that I love that we've met and connected. We have some conversations off air as well, and I just feel like we've known each other for so long. So when travel is okay again, of course I would love to come over and see you, or you come here, but also I just love that technology, we can be doing this now as well as in the future. So I really am thankful for your support. I love meeting other colorists, and if any of your followers send me DMs on Instagram or have special podcast requests and things, I'm totally open to that as well. So yeah, I'm really excited for this year. I know last year's been a little bit of another emoji, let's just say, that rhymes with ooh. So there's so much online education, and just also some of the bonuses from it has been hairdressers like myself and Elaine and so many other people that have forced themselves out of their own comfort zone to learn how to do things in a technology-based world. So we can use things like StreamYard and learning how to use Loom and Zoom. And it's also, I think, good for us as educators and facilitators, because we're learning and we're talking our talk, where we're saying get out of your comfort zone, try new things, but also stick in your lane. So I know that I can educate, I can color hair, but all this technology is really different, but I'm doing it. And I think it's really important for me to grow. And I really greatly respect all of your community members for investing in themselves, for being the top in their industry by doing so. And you're in terrific hands with Elaine. She has some pretty fabulous friends. I see Beth Minardi's doing things with you, and you did your first event last year that was a really big event. And so congratulations. I just wanted to really give you a shout out to how incredible I think you are, and your members as well, because they're really investing in themselves. And I think that that's incredible.
Thank you so much. And of course, right back at you on every single thing that you said. I love you. And you are joining us for Revival 2021. So you've heard it here, guys. Kristina is on the lineup for this year's show. So I saw a lot of comments saying we need to see this visual. We need these donut highlights. So we're going to save that. And maybe Kristina will do that in her Revival session.
Yeah, I'm going to do a mannequin head with actual donuts on it.
I think you should.
I think that would really click in. Okay, great. Sorted.
I think you should. We're going to have to put donuts in the swag box too. Keep with the theme. Yes. We'll send out many donuts in the swag. Okay.
I love it.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. We will definitely meet in person very soon. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day. Rest of your day. Take care.